Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Miskatonic University Radio, a podcast and live stream exploring fantasy-like games as Arkham Horror, the card game. I'm Dane.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Ben.
In this episode, we are responding to some very real questions that you, meaning the real listeners of the show, have sent us, and giving some recommendations on some cool other stuff, Arkham-adjacent things, right?
We're all about interaction. We're all about giving people what they want. We're all about providing solutions for people. So I think that's what we're going to try to do today.
I feel like that was like an ad, word for word, from like AT&T or something.
No, it didn't include mentioning to like and subscribe. That's
Oh, that's
if you
true.
want
That's
ads,
true.
I think that goes without saying.
Click the little bell, the
The
jingling bell.
the bell's critical sometimes. It depends on the mood of YouTube. So,
Fair.
all right. Do we just want to jump right in then?
Yeah, let's answer some questions.
For some
Some
reason,
burning questions.
so I'm gonna read the questions. You guys wouldn't let me read them ahead of time for some reason, so I'm just gonna dive right in. So this one is MUR Crew. I have some friends who are new to the game and aren't sure what to get between the Dunwich Legacy and the Path to Carcosa. Which should they get first? How should they decide what to buy in the future? This is from asking for a friend at bmail.biz.
That's definitely one of the best ISPs out there. Is the Carcosa are the Carcosa boxes out yet, or do those come out like soon?
I think they just came out, or at least the Investigators I think came out in March, and the campaign is either out or coming out very soon.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I honestly haven't been keeping track of it because I bought the original 5 years ago or whatever. So
Are we also should we assume that when these originally came out, you sort of had to buy the campaign cards and the player cards at the same time because they were kind of evenly distributed in the packs.
True.
Obviously, that's no longer the case. If you wanted, you could buy the Dunwich player cards and the Carcosa campaign or something like that. Should we assume that people are still going to buy them together, or should we sort of just do each separately?
I mean, I think people that dive hardcore into Arkham will probably try to buy them together, but maybe someone that still hasn't fully committed to the game might want to just buy one of the products, like either the cards or another campaign or something.
Because I think on the campaign side of things, it's sort of easy because we talk a lot about how great Carcosa is. That's like one of our favorite campaigns, and Dunwich is it's a pretty good intro campaign for newer people, but it's not as interesting these days. Like it's sort of was created before they developed a lot of the fun stuff that they would later add. So from a campaign perspective, I would say unless you're sure that you're going to play through everything in order, I would probably go straight to Carcosa. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, when I introduce people to the game that like it, I still kind of do everything in order because Dunwich helps enforce the basic rule foundations a lot. But Carcosa is definitely just the more fun experience. I don't know if there's because if you don't experience Dunwich, then you don't realize how fantastic a leap of Carcosa is. But you probably played the Devourer below, so you probably could probably understand.
I mean, I think it's kind of like the question you have to ask if you're recommending a TV show to somebody. Do you recommend that they start with season 1, episode 1 and watch the whole thing, even if you know that the first season isn't that good? Or do you recommend you know what? I'm worried that if you start with season 1, you'll kind of you won't think it's that cool and you'll skip it before you get to the really good stuff. So I would recommend starting with season 2 or 3. It's sort of like that question, right? If you know someone's eventually going to play everything, then sure, start with Dunwich. But if there's any doubt, if there's a chance that it would make more sense for people to go straight for the good stuff, then I'd say go to Carcosa.
Yeah.
That's probably a good way to evaluate it because Dunwich, like Ben said, is a good jumping off point for newer players where it's not quite as complex or doing weird things every scenario. Carcosa kind of very much has different themes and things going on all at once. For me, the Dunwich Legacy is like a regular cat. It's very good. It checks all the boxes. But Carcosa is like the little cat.
What are the boxes that you have for a cat?
It's a cat. It's good.
Meows.
They're enjoyable to be around. They're fluffy. They meow sometimes, and it's cute. But sometimes there will be a cat in the corner of the room that looks like a little gremlin. And it may or may not like either maul the shit out of you or be the best cat ever. And really, like, that one is just always the one to go for if you really want to have a great time.
That's the
I'm
cat you
gonna
pick. The cat that might kill you.
I'm gonna side with
Yes.
Ben on this one in the sense that this entire analogy did not at all help me to understand what we're talking about, and in fact made it a lot worse.
Well,
But
anyway,
maybe some of our maybe asking for a friend at bmail.biz found it helpful.
yes.
So we've been talking about the campaign for the player cards. I mean, I don't know. I think Dane might have some thoughts about this. For me, it's sort of like all the boxes have really good cards in them. So if you know that like this is the exact deck I want to play, then it makes sense to buy the box that has the cards you need. But if you're not laser focused on one deck, I kind of think it's just like eventually you want to buy all of them, so the order doesn't matter as much. I don't know. What do you think, Dane?
No, yeah, totally, totally that sentiment. Just kind of try and get everything, but if you have to, if you're just going like from the core set or just from the core set and the starter packs, it's kind of a toss up because Dunwich has some really core cards. It's hard for me to separate myself from the way that we started playing, which was, like upon release, core set, Dunwich happened. So it's hard to pull myself away from decks with like, for example, Shortcut and Peter Sylvester and Strange Solution and all that stuff that like feels like classic Arkham experience
Yeah.
versus Carcosa, which also has some like super big staples in cards like Border Protection Level 2. Right? Like those things, like Logical Reasoning is also a pretty good card, and it's like it's hard to say one over the other. It really is just like maybe the best thing to point to is the investigators that come in the packs because they're kind of a main drawing point, right? They're who you're going to experience the game through. So in Carcosa, you've got like Mark, which is one of the best, most like strongest investigators in the game. You've got Min, who's really fun and dynamic. You have, you know, other investigators who are good.
Famously, Dane's favorite investigator, Min, who Dane has had so much fun playing in the past.
I mean, Akachi's in there, and she's like a very straightforward, like asset-based mystic, which can be kind of just shows off like the power that a mystic can have without being too complicated. I don't know. It's like some of them are harder to play than others, so it's depending if you want like the more challenging deck building. Like you can try to play Lola if you really want to challenge yourself. But even like Mark is like he's very powerful, but you have to like think about how to build his deck and like how to play him each turn to maximize his power. So that can be fun. Versus like Akachi, who's like you just play assets and she gets extra charges, so it's more straightforward, and you can maybe throw in some weird cards for like events or whatever to spice stuff up. I forget who else is in who else is in Carcosa. Who's a rogue? Oh, Safina. Yeah, Safina. Yes, I mean Safina's definitely interesting. Safina's one that I feel like you need like a bigger card pool than what is offered in Carcosa or Dunwich to really see how well she can do.
I think that's true. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah,
it
is.
is.
But you get 6 investigators in Carcosa.
Does Ash Campy and Duke both come in Carcosa? No, that's Dunwich.
Sorry, 5.5.
No, Ash Campy is in Dunwich. So, I mean, if you're playing solo versus multiplayer, that also I guess is something to consider because, like some of the investigators, like Jenny and like Ashcan and Pete are very popular solo investigators because they kind of like have well-rounded skills. But we don't like them as much in multiplayer because we kind of feel like they don't shine as well when they're compared against people that can like really focus on something. So that's something to consider too. Like if you want maybe better solo options, I think the Dunwich investigators are maybe a little bit more powerful there.
One last thing to mention, because we should definitely move on, is I think if you don't have the new core set, then maybe there's a slightly stronger argument for Dunwich because there are a lot of sort of essential cards in there. But in the new core set, they put some of the most popular sort of fundamental Dunwich cards into the new core set. So if you still have the old core set, maybe there's like a slightly better argument for getting the Dunwich player cards first. But if you have the newer core set, it probably is like a toss-up.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, I mean, Edge of the Earth is also available too. I mean, asking for a friend didn't ask about Edge of the Earth, but should you consider getting one of these 2 expansions or the cards before Edge of the Earth, or is Edge of the Earth like a fine first pickup given the choice?
I think if you're new to the game, I would recommend either of these before Edge of the Earth. I mean, Edgy Earth is great, but the stuff is a little bit weirder. It's a little bit more complicated, maybe. Like I think this is a better starting point. But you could do it. It wouldn't be that bad.
Even the card types are a little atypical, right? They've got the multi-class cards, and then in the campaign side, it's like you have a very different campaign than all of the other campaigns are going to offer.
Yeah, I mean these ones these ones are both like basically linear, right? There's the Carcosa, you start to see some like branching path sort of, but you're still doing the scenarios 1 to 8 basically. So and yeah, Edge of the Earth is definitely more complex there. So I don't know, it didn't sound like we had a final decision.
I think we gave some pretty good non-committal advice. Hopefully that'll be helpful to this person.
All right.
Should we move on to the next one though?
All right, sure. So the next question is, my cardboard chits got wet, and I have an inordinate amount of money to spend. What do you use to bling out your Arkham Horror chits? From Mr. Moneybags 288, or perhaps 288.
I was confused about this too. I was not familiar with the word chits used this way, but apparently that's a thing.
It's vaguely familiar to me as in that's some type of board game component, but I don't ever say it. So I don't know, maybe this is a term from outside of New England or United States or something. I don't know. Dane, do you know what a chit is? Am I pronouncing it correctly? Is it pronounced kit? Is it
Chits.
Okay.
There was a back when I lived on the East Coast, the like Connecticut-wide game folks who gathered together at different stores were called Chits and Giggles. So that's how you know it's
very,
a real
very
thing.
fun.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like board game places love to use the word meeple whenever they can. So I think this is sort of kind of
the club
like
I was in college was like the cardboard and meeple offensive or something like that.
Sounds right. Yeah.
So, okay. So this question about extra swag, which we often spend our extra money on, right?
Yeah, it's definitely like the cardboard tokens that come with the things are fine, but if you spend enough hours in the game, eventually you just kind of want to get some cooler looking stuff,
Yeah.
Yes. So I think Dane and I both have various combinations of the Team Covenant acrylic tokens, which are pretty good. They make health and sanity tokens, clues, resources, doom, stuff like that. They do different doom for each of the cycles, which is kind of neat. I don't have those, but Dane does. So that's kind of like a one-stop shop that has most things, except very annoyingly, they do not make chaos tokens, which is the thing that I've complained about for like years.
Yes. I mean, chaos tokens are the thing that I had the highest priority to swap in, just because you have them in the bag, you're touching them a lot, and you're mixing them around, so they get beat up much faster than I think any of the other
they literally like wear out to the point where it's hard to read them, like pretty frequently. Yeah.
I mean, I guess actually that's not totally true. Obviously, I get card sleeves for all of my cards before it was the first investment, so that the cards are protected. But yeah, the chaos tokens, I have the orbits, not sure how to say it, but tokens, which are kind of like, I don't know what the word.
They're like printed circuit board material, like which is, but they don't look like that really. They look just kind of like interesting tokens.
Yeah, I like the designs in some of them. It was like a couple waves of them before they kind of finalized the designs, but they're very hardy. I think a lot of people that get them put them in coin cases, but I haven't bothered because they don't seem to really scratch, and I can't really. They have a little bit of like a bump on them. Like I guess if you dug your hand in the bag for a long time, you might be able to like feel each token and be like, oh, this is the Elder Sign, but I just don't do that. So I just spin around and they make like they mix up very easily, and they are the same size as the original cardboard tokens. So I like those a lot, and I have a couple other things from Orbits. But Dane, what do you have for chaos tokens?
I use these tokens from used to be called Drax tokens, but I'm pretty sure it's now Vampire tokens. Which same people, but they make these awesome little tokens that are actually smaller than the traditional like chaos tokens, which are like the size of like a $50, a quarter, or something like that, somewhere between that. And like these ones are like the circumference of like a dime, but they
Okay.
have like a little sort of like bubble on top, which is like a glass, um, uh, like a glass covering, and then on the back there's like a nice little like metal coating, and they're one sided, so they look really nice when they're down on the board, like sealed or something like that. Or if somebody wants to dramatically flip them, they can like kind of, if you're doing it like a weird olive thing. Harrison did this, so
Hmm.
and for the gym trumpet solo, you can like draw 5 face down, and then you slowly flip them one at a time. So I just like them. I like them. They make a little nice little clinking sound in the bag and stuff. But what is notable about Ben's tokens should be that he does not use a chaos bag, which is what most folks who play this game do. He uses the patented Ben Chaos Cup,
I do have a,
or
it's a
bowl
little
rather.
it's like a little tiny bowl. I don't remember where I got it from, but my tokens all fit in there and I spin them around pretty easily. Although actually, did I get I'm constantly trying to find a chaos bag
I have
that's actually
a
cool, or like a goblet or something that's like spooky.
I have
Uh
one that I like, which I thought I got it from Etsy, but then I just went to look at my like Etsy purchases page to see if I could find the link, and it wasn't there. So I think I might have ordered it from some like other Etsy like store. But it's sort of like it's like brown, sort of like suede almost on the outside, and it's this sort of like a cloth, sort of like night sky starry fabric on the inside. It has a little drawstring. It's pretty cool. I like that a lot. So you can definitely find cool stuff like that. I agree that finding some kind of like cool, goblet or some kind of like really cool looking spooky thing would be really neat. I also have the Orbits tokens. They're kind of cool. I would say I'm still in the market for like my dream is for someone to make really cool like metal coin tokens or like wooden tokens maybe. I think that could be really neat. I would love to get some of those, but I'm fine using
I
the Orbits ones
I
in the
think I've
meantime.
seen wooden ones. The problem with the wooden ones, I think, is you have to cut into them a lot more or they're just painted, and that might be easier to tell,
Yeah.
like what when you
Well, I
feel around the
even
bag. But
I did a little bit of looking around and I found there's places where you can order kind of like wooden coins as like a promo thing, or if you're running like a carnival or whatever, and you can get whatever you want etched into them.
mm,
But you have to order like hundreds of them. And
oh,
honestly, they didn't look all that cool. Like it was kind of neat, but I think the ideal thing I would love would be to find kind of either like ancient Egyptian coins or like 1920s style American coins or something like that, but that
That'd
have
be
the
neat.
chaos tokens on them. I don't know. Maybe someday somebody will make something like that.
I don't know. The other reason I like the Orbits tokens is the Orbits person was ready to go immediately upon release for both Innsmouth and Edge of the Earth for the new tokens there. So I had them available and I could immediately use them and didn't have to revert back to the old tokens. And they also did like custom like Elder Sign and Autofail tokens for a couple of the campaigns, although they're like limited release, so I only got the uh Forgotten Age ones, which feature snakes on them. So it makes
That that is a really good point though, because if you buy chaos tokens like the regular ones from someplace, if they don't have like, I mean, frost tokens, okay, like if you're not at least you could still use them if you're not playing Edge of the Earth.
mm,
But if they don't have like bless and curse tokens, and then just somebody in your group is playing, Faustian bargain or something, you basically can't use those tokens, right?
Right.
So like,
right.
and
Yeah.
who knows if they're gonna like introduce new tokens in the next campaign or the one after that. So it like that's a selling point for kind of ones with a known track record like Orbits, where like they are pretty popular and you know that they are going to keep making whatever else comes out. So
Totally. Yeah. The other thing that we should mention, though we don't have it here, and I do have some, are location connectors.
Mm.
oh yeah,
Sometimes
those are
they're
cool.
not huge, like hugely important, but sometimes there have been like these scenarios with these huge maps, or maps with like 5 different connectors, and it's not exactly apparent what is going to be where. So those really help out in those circumstances where you're like, I have no idea how to represent or how to remember that these are connected to each other.
Yeah.
So I know that I think Orbits has some location
Or,
connectors. Am I
or
right? I know that Drax
Orbits
tokens
has
has them. A whole bunch
some.
of people have them.
I don't. The ones I have, I don't think I got them from Orbits. I think it was before Orbits existed. They're like 2 inches long. They're just like double-sided arrows. They're actually like a little bit and made up like a hard plastic, and
Yeah.
they're double-sided, I think, so you can flip it over to have like a one-directional thing. They're actually a little bit bigger than I kind of want these days, because there's some scenarios that have a lot of locations, and I don't want to like have 2 inches of space necessarily for the
Yeah.
locations,
Or
because I
yeah.
only have so much table space. So
I think they're
like
the same ones. I'm pretty sure they're
I
from
feel like
by the same token.
that
Or
might be
like
it.
I think I
thought-
have I have the orbits ones, and yeah, I agree that some type of like direction indicator thing is definitely a pretty good thing to have. Another thing I would mention just briefly, Ben and I think, kind of roll our eyes at this, but Dane has, I would say, about 50 or 60 different types of 3D printed tokens to represent like individual things like bullets or charges on a purple spell versus like charges on a green spell versus like magnifying glass. I don't know. Dane has like
charges.
you can, if
Hawkeye
you love
folded.
little 3D printed things, you can get like anything you want, which they are
Yeah.
kind of cool, honestly. Like, it's not that they're not cool, it's just that like I would hate to have to keep track of all of them because I'm very lazy. But if you're into that kind of stuff, you can definitely look around on Etsy or whatever and find a bunch of those.
Yeah, I do like them. It's more of a transport
Exactly,
commitment.
yeah.
If I feel like, oh well, I gotta bring these specific tokens that I might not actually use, type of thing for me. But you know,
Ben already has to bring like 50 minis around everywhere, which that's the real premium S tier
That's true.
token. Like, it's also impossible to buy at this point, but like that's the really good shit, you know?
Yeah, FFG released, it was probably like 10 years ago now, maybe a little bit less, but they had a line of Investigator miniatures for like that came out like when Arkham Second Edition was like their main game. So they released like 48 miniatures for all those Investigators, and at some point I collected them all. I think I got most of them for like $2 when the store was going out of business or something, or having some sale. But they're very nice because they stick out on the table. The downside of using the miniatures is you can't like flip them over to indicate your turns over, which I think a lot of people do like about like a some type of character token. But I've seen people like make like pog type things out of the cards that they can like flip over. There's also are many several different 3D printer options. I've seen that there's like a stylized like silhouette for each Investigator. I don't know what it's called, but there's a couple cool things. I don't know. We can throw links on the blog if we think of them. But and then also I've definitely been, that original 48 is less than the number of Investigators in Arkham Horror the card game. So I definitely got a couple Hero Forge miniatures thrown in there to fill in the missing ones, which are definitely pricey, but you know, I like them. They're cool.
There's also, speaking of Investigators, so somebody somewhere made like a spreadsheet explaining how to make like a Lego minifigure for each of the Investigators, like which parts to track down, and there's really nothing I would rather even have that than the like official minis that Ben has, as cool as those are. But it's an incredibly difficult and expensive and time consuming thing to like track down all the little individual Lego parts that were only released in like one kit in 2009 to like make all of those. So I don't know, maybe someday I'll try to do that, but
that sounds like the ultimate Lego Arkham Quest for you, Dan. You could be working towards.
What we need to do is, like, these days they always like Lego has this thing where you can like submit things and people can vote on them, and the ones that get the most votes like might become official kits. And people always do stuff like, oh, I made the car from Ghostbusters or whatever. It's like, I don't think there's enough Arkham Lego heads to ever get like an official Arkham Lego set made, but that would definitely save me a lot of time if we could somehow get that to happen. So maybe we should get to work on it.
The last thing I wanted to mention, as far as Investigator minis go, we met a cool person at Arkham Nights last year who has a shop called Arkham Fantasy, who makes these really cool little 16-bit like mini cards that come with like little standees. They sometimes come with them and they sometimes don't. I don't remember what the status of them is on their shop right now, but super cool, like retro sort of gamey type Investigators that are all like very, very well made, like cool, well shaded and all that kind of stuff. So if you're into that kind of stuff,
yeah, they distinctly capture each Investigator, even though there's, you know, it's just like 12 different colored squares or whatever. So
yeah,
or 16-bit.
The Mansions of Madness minis are also an option too.
Yeah, but Mansions of Madness is not cheap. I think Mansions of Madness is dead.
They kill it? Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if there was an official like, oh, we're done with Mansions of Madness type thing, but it hasn't had a new thing in like 3 years. So, but yeah, those were an option. I did buy, I think, some of the Mansions of Madness just to get miniatures, but you know, at some point I was like, I'm not actually playing Mansions of Madness very much, so I stopped. stopped buying the expansions, but
Fair.
there are some decent components in there. The thing with the monster minis that come with Mansions of Madness and also were part of the original line is they have like really weird bases because the bases were designed for like the Arkham Second Edition like little square tokens to like slide into them or something. So they're all these like really awkward bases that are like way too big to like use in the card game properly or really in the original Arkham game. So, but you know, whatever. Yeah, I mean, do I have a last thing? Oh, I victory displays are things I see people have a lot. I think I have some little like art easel things that you can just like put the cards, the act and the judge on, like things on the victory display. But
there was a really cool kind of like Art Deco city one that a bunch of people had at Arkham Knights last year. That was pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, there's lots of cool swag out there. You know, if anybody has cool swag we didn't mention, you know, shoot a link in the comments or on our Discord. So, all right, next question. All right, what? Greetings from Candyland, sickos. Your recent Investigator tier list episode made me so mad I had to call an ambulance to take me to a pet hospital for rabies treatment. Now I owe thousands of dollars in medical debt. This isn't a question, but I'm going to come to each of your homes with a golf club and swing it around in front of your front lawn until you die somehow. Excelsior.
Wow.
From Cyber Kyle. What is this?
That's very aggressive from Cyber Kyle here. You know, when you put yourself out there on the internet, inevitably some people are going to have a negative reaction to it. And I think that's what's happening here. Does that sound right?
I guess if you're an artist, they always say to never like listen to your critics or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's what people say.
Never start paying attention to yourself because it's a hole that you're never gonna crawl out of or whatever.
Well, just to pivot away from this a little bit, I think we did see a couple of much more polite and reasonable comments of people that disagreed with our tier rankings, right? I think I remember somebody saying, I think at least a couple of people on the Discord were surprised that we put Marie so low. And that's sort of fair that like I've never actually played her. I think Dane was the only one that had played her and was had a very negative experience. And similarly, I think somebody recently mentioned that they thought Norman should be higher. Like Norman is actually really good.
Yeah, we didn't put all the Seekers in S tier, and some people were pitching like, why did you do that? What's wrong?
People were saying you guys don't like Seekers enough. You really need to like rank them higher.
I mean,
the other thing was that we had Gloria, I think, at A tier, and like Luke was hovering somewhere around there too.
I thought we put Gloria in S.
No, Gloria was S.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because like I think somebody said Luke should be an S or something like that because we put him in A. We weren't quite sure. I haven't played him too much.
I mean, he can break the game sometimes, but I don't know if it's not nearly as much as like Gloria can break the game by completely neutering the deck in counter deck.
Luke feels to me like a very high skill cap kind of deck. Like I could imagine it being like S tier if you're like a brain genius and you really know that deck inside and out. I could see it being like an S tier deck. Yeah, if you're really top level brain genius.
Playing Geist in Netrunner, it's just like you have a million different triggers and like you have a tome next to you for all the different things.
Playing Geist was not that hard. Let's just like use up all your breakers and make $1 trillion and then win. That's all you really had to do.
Fair.
Hope they don't have whatever the thing is that like removes your whole graveyard.
Yeah, sure.
All right, do we want to move on from this, or do you want to hard commit to whatever we put Diana in? We put her in D tier or something. I don't remember.
Were there any other?
Doesn't belong there.
Were there any other like reasonable objections or disagreements with our? I mean, there definitely were quite a few. Like, we haven't played every Investigator 100 times, right? It's all kind of based on our subjective experience.
Yeah.
The other suggestion I think I saw was that we didn't consider some of the high tier combos that you could do as much. I think the one was pointed out was Ancient Covenant, which we did recently evaluate in the Binders Trials episode a couple episodes ago, and I think that didn't get sealed in Dane's card box prison forever. So, but it was like could you rank some of these things higher? But we're trying to relate them all in relation to each other on how quickly they can pace through the game and succeed at getting clues and whatever. And I don't know, there are good combos in other classes, but I think at least in multiplayer, Seekers kind of shine very highly at getting clues quickly. So
like that one in particular, I mean that we talked about it on the Binder Trials. Like it does seem stronger than we gave it credit for, but anything that just kind of helps you pass some tests on command is going to be better in solo than it is in like a 3 or 4 player game.
Yeah.
So I think I don't totally I still kind of feel the same way that I felt when we were first ranking the investigators, in the sense that like I don't think Ancient Covenant really pushes anybody up or down that much.
Yeah.
Fair.
All right. Well, let's move on to the last question. So this is hey MER pals. As y'all know, I keep all my Arkham Horror cards in a giant kitchen trash bag that also contains Nintendo DS games, root vegetables, and shaving cream. The system works perfectly for me, but everyone is different. How do you all store and organize your Arkham card collections? This is from just one name, like Madonna, Colin.
Oh, this is from our good friend Colin that we played Arkham with for years.
It's not just on his license. It's just there's no last name. It's just Colin, just like Madonna.
Probably, yeah. Well, I mean, you guys have a lot of difficulty pronouncing his last name, and there's been some discussion about that in the past. So maybe that's why he left it off, just to save you guys some trouble. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has their own system, right? And I know I tend to use. Do you guys know those like white cardboard BCW boxes that hold like? They make them for all different sizes of number of cards they hold, from like 100 up to I think like 800 for the single row ones, and then they also make like double row ones.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have like one of those for each campaign, and then I have a couple others for like the standalones and things like that. And then I think right now I have 2 for player cards. Like as the number of player cards has grown, it's kind of finally at the point where like I need 2 giant full ones for all the player cards, and I'll be very annoyed soon when I have to have like a third one, because at the moment I think one of them is all the level 0 cards and one of them is all the higher level cards.
Yeah. They're pretty cheap too, right?
Yeah, they're very cheap in there. Well, it's one of these things where like you either buy them at your local store for like a pretty big markup, or like sometimes you can get them on Amazon. You can get a good deal on like 10 of them, but they don't look very fancy, but they seal up pretty tight, and you can like put them in a backpack or a suitcase or something, which is nice. And you can write on them to label. You can write on them with a Sharpie to
if
label.
you put them
what
in
they
a
are.
suitcase, the TSA will definitely pull them out of your suitcase and touch all their cards with some type of
Literally
cards with some type of
100%
weird white
of the
matter.
time. Yeah.
Unless you take the initiative and take them out of your suitcase first and just let them scan it. That's the only way I've managed to dodge.
And then they'll think you're trying to bomb the airport. Yeah, I mean the thing you have to understand is that for TSA like boxes of cards for TSA agents, it's like glowy, glittery things for cats or whatever. It's like if they see it, it's just they're just like, oh, what's that? Oh, I have to touch it. They just can't help themselves. So you gotta watch out for that if you're going through an airport.
You're like, oh, you're not a terrorist. You're just a nerd. I see. And then
Yeah,
they close it, and everybody else is kind of
they usually look pretty upset after they've realized this as well.
Like,
yeah.
Damn it! I thought I was gonna get promoted for catching the worst terrorist of all time with the dumbest looking bomb of all time, and instead I just found some nerd with a bunch of cards.
They got their hand on the radio, other hand on the pepper spray. They're ready.
Yeah.
So
They're
for
already
me,
thinking like, yeah.
So when I initially started, I did try to organize everything in binders with like 9 sleeve card pages. I did that for a little while. I eventually gave up on that because it was way too hard to keep things organized, and like pulling cards in and out of that was just very slow. So I eventually mostly copied what Dan does, which is the BCW boxes, the white boxes. But I do like keep the return to boxes and put a whole campaign in there once that comes out. I'm very concerned they're just going to stop doing the return tos at some point, which they definitely could do that at any time, because they're really not an actual necessary product other than I like the box. But I like those because they kind of look like I like the style, and they contain the whole campaign relatively easily. There's a little bit of extra space in them, which isn't ideal, but sometimes I put extra tokens in there, and they look nice because they show they show like the campaign art and stuff on them. But
they look like little file cabinets.
Yeah, which I'm not utilizing at all, but I have some of them sitting behind me. So, but yeah, I don't know. Usually easy enough to transport. TSA still opens them up and looks through them all. So, and my player cards, roughly organized the same as Dan. I have them, I think, by level and class in a couple of those boxes. So, but Dane has something much more elaborate based on these pictures he has here.
Yeah. So Harrison gifted me these chests, which are these big filing cabinets with these like little drawers that are actually like perfectly suited to one entire class. So from front to back, you can see kind of in the left or the right image there, there's like survivors level 0 cards just kind of all kind of in there, and then there's survivor level 1 to 5 cards like behind them, and they're perfectly like at least at this time perfectly compact. If any more cards are released, then I'm gonna have to like reorganize literally everything and find an entire new way to like add more rows for the classes. But for now, it's perfect. There's one for all our scenario stuff, our campaigns, and there's one for all the cards.
So, Dane, are you the one that's actively rooting against FFG announcing whatever the next product is because it's going to destroy your organizational system?
I need that to come as fast as possible.
Okay, I'm just making sure you're not sending out negative vibes about the announcement.
No, I would rather my sorting need to be reimagined for like 4 hours rather than us to not have more Arkham material, please.
All right, good.
I feel like 4 hours is a pretty conservative estimate for. I think if you have to totally redo the whole thing, it might be a lot more than that, but we'll see.
Yeah, whenever I have to reorganize my Arkham cards, it's an afternoon. It's afternoon at least. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on storage or suggestions? Didn't you have an elaborate suitcase at some point you carried stuff around in, Dane? And did the collection outgrow that?
Oh, the mythical suitcase. So I used to have one of those like black suitcases that businessmen would carry around in like
doing business.
The 60s or 70s or whatever. Yes, businessmen. Yeah, very very
business box.
Official. Yeah, it was the Arkham business box. But around the time of like halfway through the Forgotten Age, a little bit more than that, it was just too much. But it would perfectly fit the little BCW boxes that Dan was talking about. And for traveling, I just have to use those because every single one of the cards that I have in my collection is sleeved, which is not something that I think Dan does. I think most people won't spend like double the money on the sleeves, but I was already in too deep. I had to keep going.
I sleeve all the campaign cards, which is sort of expensive, but it's like if I had to sleeve up a campaign before playing it, I would just never play any campaigns because it just takes too long. So, but I don't keep the player cards sleeved except for like promos and rare things. I just sleeve individual decks. One last thing to say about the BCW boxes is they are kind of perfectly sized so that those sort of like banking or file cardboard boxes that you can get like a pack of 10 at Staples for packing like books and things. One thing that's cool is that they're kind of the BCW boxes are perfectly sized, the 800 card ones, that you can fit like 3 of those in a row in one of those big banker boxes, or like 4 if you turn them sideways. So you can basically like fill up an entire banker box with those 800 card BCW boxes. So maybe not as useful for this game, but if you collect, say, magical cards, it's kind of a handy way to do that.
Fair. I don't know if we want to get people hooked on multiple card games, Dan. It's dangerous times.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, I think that was all for questions. I think the second half of the show we kind of wanted to talk about some Arkham related, or semi Arkham adjacent at least, media that we enjoy that we were going to recommend. Was that the plan?
Yeah, just sort of like some stuff that we've been doing or enjoying recently that we think other people who play Arkham Horror the card game or similar games might appreciate. And I think the first thing is a little video game that Dan and I have been playing quite a bit. You might have heard of this. It's called Elden Ring, right?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not really sure if too many people are on the Elden Ring train quite yet.
It's kind of pointless to recommend it because I think it sold like 12 million copies in the first week and it like did really, really well.
Oh yeah.
We've been trying
selling game in history, I think, or something like that.
I mean, it's nowhere near like the Call of Duty games and stuff or Grand Theft Auto, but like for a very weird Japanese game, I think no one expected it to do anywhere near this well. So that's pretty cool.
Obscure game.
Yeah, we've been trying to get Ben to play it, so maybe he will at some point. I don't know. I mean, it's
real at some point. I'm not sure my current computer can actually handle it.
Yeah.
And I don't have a PS4 and Xbox, and the Switch. It's not on the Switch because obviously the Switch can't handle it. So
yeah, and what I've heard is I think the PS4 and Xbox One versions of it aren't really very good, and they're just they don't look very good. So you kind of really want to either have a relatively decent PC or like one of the new consoles, I think.
Here's something I'm playing on PS4, and it's pretty fine. It's just like it doesn't have the super clean quality that the PCs have.
Here, I'll hold up a copy of it for people, sort of like on a like on a
copy.
Like on a talk show, like on the Tonight Show or whatever. People will hold up a copy of the album. So here it is, Elden Ring.
Hey.
Really fun game. I mean, it's basically like the easy like pat comparison is like Dark Souls meets Breath of the Wild, but it pretty much kind of is that, right? It's like a big open kind of Zelda style world that you can explore, and you ride a horse around. Only it has, I mean, Breath of the Wild is fun, but like the combat, I would say, is a lot more interesting in this. And
it's a true sandbox, right?
It's a lot weirder. Like it's very like every individual part of it that you kind of like dive into, you can just find a lot of weird stuff going on. I've basically done kind of the first 2 areas and the first 2 dungeons, both of which were excellent. So I really enjoyed that, and I'm really looking forward to playing the rest of it.
Yeah, it's like a very, very true. If you just ride in a direction, you will find adventure. Like it, and it will be different from another thing.
It's going to be a little bit. It's not going to be quite adventure in the same way as in like Zelda, where it's usually something relatively like brightly colored and kind of like kid appropriate.
Sure.
It's a little bit more like dark and weird and like gross, but like
it could
mostly
be a giant crab that wants to pound you into a dust.
Yeah, right? Like there's a lot of like weird giant zombie monsters made out of a bunch of dead bodies or whatever, but in a cool way. Like it's
yeah. Everything wants to kill you, basically.
Oh, yeah.
But in a cool, fun way.
And like all the other From Software games, part of the fun of it is the kind of like interaction with other players. Like it's not really like a multiplayer game, and you're mostly playing alone, but you can through an overly complicated process, other people can like join your game either to invade you or to help you out, and you can also leave messages that other people could read, and there's kind of a whole weird subculture of like funny messages people leave that can be kind of fun if you're playing it. So really, really, really good game. I mean, everyone's already talking about how great it is, so we're not really breaking any new ground here, but like it really is as good as people say.
I mean, what I've seen from it, from what I've seen from it, like one of the coolest things is like the creature design is like really unique. I don't know. Yeah, are there Lovecraftian vibes? I know previous From Software games had some Lovecraftian stuff. Or is it's just this weird
I think
nonsense?
So. Not as much as like Bloodborne, but definitely a bit of that. So
yeah, there's some cosmic weirdness going on in it. Plus you got those, I don't even know what they are on the right side of the screen. these weird whale orca looking dudes. I don't know.
All of the FromSoft games do have their own kind of like weird sense of humor. Sometimes that sense of humor is like, wouldn't it be funny if there was like a rock that fell on you and killed you right at the end of this thing, and like there was no way to know about it, and that is very funny. But also there's just kind of I don't know. I think they have like a very subtle sense of humor that's kind of fun.
Totally. Yeah.
All right, so
what's the next thing we want to recommend to people?
So this one's a board game which I haven't played. Appears to have boats approaching an island on the cover, and also maybe some type of water elementals flying above the island. Is this an Avatar: The Last Airbender game?
It would be cool it would be cooler if it was an Avatar James Cameron Avatar kind of game.
Would it be cooler?
No.
That movie's pretty good. You guys should watch that.
Animated Pocahontas.
Dan, how excited are you for those Avatar by James Cameron sequels? All like 12 of them.
I am legit excited to see those. Okay, I'm going to take a brief detour from the stuff that we're supposed to talk about to briefly say that I saw 2 movies this week. I saw the Michael Bay film Ambulance, which is one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had in a movie theater. And it was incredible. Came out like no one went and saw it, but it was incredible. And I also saw the Daniels film Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was very, very, very good as well.
That latter one
was incredible.
That latter one I've been wanting to see. I heard very good things.
They are both good, but if I had to go back in time and only see one of them, I would probably pick Ambulance. It's just like cop cars crashing into each other for an hour and a half. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Like it was.
What does that have to do with James Cameron's Avatar though?
Well, I think what I was originally going to say was like, oh yeah, you're making fun of Avatar, but Avatar is better than literally every Marvel movie. And then that just kind of got me excited to talk about other movies. So
not I bar, Dan.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, tell us about Spirit Island, Dane. I have this game. I invited people over to play it. They started reading through the manual, and they were like, "Oh wow, this seems so complicated. Maybe we should." And then we ended up playing Mario Kart instead. So, yeah.
Well, the complexity went from like 5,000 to about 11. So this game, Spirit Island, we recommend it because it is another cooperative game, except there's a twist. You are not just investigators fighting off the mythos and all the spooky, happenings. You are the spirits of an island who are fighting off the colonialists who are trying to instill like capitalism and like cheeseburgers and gross stuff on your island. You want to keep the island pristine and pure.
No
as
cheeseburgers.
These different spirits. No cheeseburgers. None of them. We don't want Dairy Queen. We don't want Dasani.
Is there a way that we could maybe have like the cheeseburgers and a little bit of the Dairy Queen, but keep like the rest of the island pristine and have like mostly untouched wilderness, but like still a little bit of cheeseburgers?
Just one McDonald's.
Like,
I'm glad you asked.
Could there be like a god of cheeseburgers like Ronald McDonald who like is, but in like a good way, who's like one of the gods of the island?
So there
Maybe
are
an expansion pack.
Yeah, well, yeah. That would be down the line. That would be for like the new gods of the island
Yeah.
or whatever. But for now, we have these spirits who you play very similar to like IDs and Netrunner or what are they? Investigators in Arkham Horror, the card game. You kind of embody them, and all of them sort of do different things. You could be the spirit of like the rivers, who is really good with rivers and wetlands, and you could be like this giant lightning phoenix who just rains lightning down on horrible people. So all of them do different things, and eventually you end up with a board where if your mom came in, she would have no idea what's happening on this board, other than that there's like 7 million pieces on the kitchen table of God knows what, and just nobody knows what's going on until you've actually played it. It's a longer game, so expect like 3 hours, but it's great. It's truly a great experience to play. There's sort of like elements of deck building in it. There's elements of not like maybe like worker placement-y sort of type stuff, but it's an all-around great game. It's been on top of Board Game Geek forever.
I think that's kind of what really is interesting to me about it is just the idea that you could have a game that kind of satisfies some of the same urges as Arkham Horror, like a co-op sort of card game, but that is maybe like a little bit more approachable. Maybe there's a little bit less like setup. Maybe there's like a little bit, maybe you can play it with like slightly younger kids because it's not as like horror-y. All of that sounds really cool. So yeah, I picked up a copy. I'm definitely excited to give it a try.
Yeah, it's one of those games where once you've played it once, it just kind of clicks because it's sort of like half of the game is automated essentially.
The art also seems really cool. I think that's like a big part of the draw for me for board games is that it like just looks fun and looks neat, and this definitely does.
Yeah, it also has my favorite name of any card in any game, which is Surprise Tigers.
I feel like Wuck 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 is better because Wuck 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 is Penguinese for surprise penguins. But I agree that Surprise Tigers is pretty good. Ben, fly to San Francisco. Let's play Spirit Island. Let's do it.
I'll do it at some point, maybe.
All right.
I don't know. Dane's trying to get me to go to Denver so I can do this legendary Meow Wolf thing that you guys have been raving about for.
I went to the Santa Fe Meow Wolf
Island
last week. It was pretty good.
I know.
Because I happen to have Spirit Island and the expansions and the cool chits that come in.
Do you even have the custom Dairy Queen expansion, Dane? Because that's the one that I'm most excited to play. Okay, that's great.
No, I do not have that.
I have a question. Is there a Meow Wolf in Seattle?
There's not. It's Santa Fe, Denver, and Las Vegas at the moment. I think they're gonna open more.
Because I want to go to Seattle also for the Arkham Horror.
I mean, the good news, we definitely should do that. I mean, the good news is Santa Fe and Vegas are both very fun places to go for a weekend, and I'm sure Denver is too. I just haven't been there.
Yeah, well, we'll make a trip of it at some point. Anything else you guys wanted to say about Spirit Island?
Well, let's move on.
All right. This next thing. I don't know what this is. This picture of a gray thing and two squares interlocked together. Dane, can you explain?
Yes. So this is it's like a music collective, and they go by the name of Cryochamber. And Cryochamber they've been around for a pretty long time. They kind of do most of their production and put up most of their music through Bandcamp. But they have a lot of albums that are sort of like dark metal and ambient metal and drone. There's a lot of like darker. It's meant to be ambient and to last for a longer time, and a lot of the themes happen to be from Lovecraft's lore, like Yog-Sothoth, all the old ones, the great old ones. And it's just a lot of people who like horror, who just kind of hang out and make cool metal music, cool ambient metal music. And this is what I've listened to when I play Arkham Horror a lot, because it just kind of can perfectly sets the creepy, dark atmosphere without having like, words necessarily or kind of doing any of that stuff. It just has a great dark tone for all the despair and horror that you'll be feeling in Arkham Horror.
I like that even just the sort of like sigils that are the logos on these album covers really look like they could be like chaos tokens or something. Like it's the same kind of
Oh yeah, you're
aesthetic,
right.
I think. Yeah, this is This is Cryochamber, one word.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, we can put like the Bandcamp link in the show notes or something. That's definitely pretty cool. I mean, I'm typically a little bit more of a fan of like yes, we have no bananas, and kind of like a fun 1920s pop music for playing Arkham. But I can see if you're like in the right kind of mood for it, this could be really neat.
Yeah, and it's actually funny. I reached out to them a while ago to just be like, hey, if we wanted to use your like music to introduce or like in the intro to one of our live streams or something like that, do we have your permission to do so? And the person was like, hey, sure. What kind of podcast is it? And I was like, well, it's for this game that you've probably never heard of, Arkham Horror, the card game. And they were like, oh yeah, we've played that before. It's a pretty neat
Cool.
game.
Nice.
So of course, so I mean, I guess I could have expected it, right? They've literally all the pantheon of all of Lovecraft's elder gods here. But yeah,
That's really
definitely
cool.
definitely good folks to support. They got
Yeah,
really
and as with any like band or musician, if there's any band or music that you're into, buying it on Bandcamp is usually way better for them financially than like streaming it. I mean, obviously, stream it to check it out if you want, but if you're really into it, it's always fun to like buy something and actually make sure the band gets something out of it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you're like me and Dan and love to be like a little treasure goblin or like pack rat and have the physical possessions in your hands, they make gorgeous like big LPs and even just CDs. You can kind of see the cover art on them on like Castor and Yog-Sothoth, for example. They have these really in-depth like books that have all these different glyphs and sigils in them, and like lyrics if there are any, credits and things like that. They're really beautiful.
That is very cool, but this is the game set in the 1920s. Can you get this music on a wax cylinder? Because I think that's what would be the most authentic. If it's
we might have to reach out to them for that.
Okay, maybe they can work on that. I mean, I know I buy stuff on Bandcamp on mini discs sometimes, so if that exists, you should definitely be able to buy some stuff on a wax cylinder. Cool. Okay, so is there anything else you want to recommend?
Well, there's another slide here.
Yeah, we do have one more slide. I think this is a movie classic, right? That we talk about a lot.
I mean, Ben and I watched this with Colin this past December, so it's relatively new to us, but I think it kind of colonized all of our brains pretty rapidly, and it was a really special experience. Ben, do you want to tell people the title of this movie and maybe briefly what it's about?
Yeah, what is this?
So I don't know if I can explain what it's about concisely, but the movie is called "Don't Let the Verb Beast Get You!" ! And the dot on the exclamation point is a little hand. So it's reaching out for it. So the tagline is of course he's the most I can't pronounce this. Indecorous aquatic menace of all time. So this is a 2012 horror comedy.
It's 2012.
It's definitely a parody, I think, of like 1950s or 60s horror movies. But I think we found it because it was filmed in like Manchester, New Hampshire. We're like, oh yeah,
Exactly. It was
that's
filmed in a small city about 10 minutes away from where I grew up in southern New
Really?
Hampshire. Yeah, and it looks like it too. Like you don't really realize when you see a movie that's not shot in like greater LA or Vancouver or like the 2 or 3 other places where it's economically viable to like shoot big movies. It's just always like, oh man, I forgot that there's houses that look like that. I forgot that the trees look like that. That was really fun for me. Yeah, I mean that was just one part of what's so great about it. But yeah, it was a really fun movie. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ben. Go ahead.
No, it's all right. Yeah, so I mean the plot of the movie is there's a river beast.
Yeah,
and it's trying to get people,
What's
and
that?
and the protagonists are trying to not let it get them.
Yeah, it's kind of like a monster of the week. Like in terms of Arkham Horror, you could compare it to like Curse of the Rougarou or something kind of like that.
It definitely had the vibe of like the main characters were being investigators and fumbling their way through trying to solve a weird random mystery in a weird little tiny town. So.
It really does map pretty well onto the kind of like narrative structure of like a investigation into the paranormal in like a small New England town. Like that's kind of why we thought it would be a really good match for people that like Arkham Horror.
I'm kind of surprised that like the whole Innsmouth thing hasn't come up because this very much looks like it like
yeah
a Innsmouth type.
I mean the Innsmouth thing is all about the ocean, and this is a river beast, but it's it's kind of similar.
That's also fair. So I guess my next question is I see that it didn't do too well on Rotten Tomatoes.
Well,
so my
Dane,
question here is
that appears to be based off of a single review, though, Dane.
Okay. I have to say something about this. So first of all, the tomato meter, Rotten Tomatoes is bullshit. Okay, they wouldn't know a good movie if it like pooped on their face. Like it's a bunch of crap. What kind of credentials do you need to review stuff on Rotten Tomatoes? Nothing. If you look on Letterboxd, which is the real cinema aficionados website, this movie does pretty well. It's really good. I just want to clarify for anybody that's maybe a little bit curious about this. This is not like a intentionally bad movie. It's a intentionally weird kind of goofy movie that is like very well made on basically a budget of $0. But it doesn't, it looks fine, like it sounds fine, like it's not like they don't know what they're doing with cameras and stuff, because they definitely do. But it's basically just like, what if they made a kind of intentionally goofy horror movie starring a bunch of like ordinary people from New Hampshire and with like a very weird and unique sense of humor. Like that's kind of the best way I can explain it. It's also, if anyone's interested, it is streaming for free on basically like the weird streaming services that are like free. So not like Netflix or whatever, but you can watch it on, I think, like Plex or Tubi. Yeah. It is really good though. I can't recommend it enough. And the guys that made this, there's just a group of kind of like indie movie people in New Hampshire that make movies. They made a bunch of other movies too that are very good. So if you like this, there's a whole cluster of other movies to check out too. And also, just like with the previous things, I'll hold up a physical copy of it.
Wow, you really committed to it.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
How many copies did you buy after we watched it on Tubi or whatever?
Only one, but I mean, if they ever make a 4K of it, I'll buy the 4K too. But at the moment, I just have this Blu-ray.
So I mean, look at more of like
was that digitally recolored? The River Beast looks like he's more vibrant in that.
That is true. Yeah.
How many people have they cracked? Wait a second. Can you hold that up again? What's the bottom of that look like with the with the sunglasses? Oh,
it looks like an experience.
You gotta crank up the saturation a little bit so that it looks good. I mean, look, your average Joe that walks into a Walmart and is looking at the Blu-ray section and they're trying to decide what to buy, their hand is going back and forth between like, oh, should I buy Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, or should I buy Don't Let the River Beast Get You? And look, one of these movies is clearly way better than the other one, right? And it's River Beast. But the cover has to entice people to make the right choice. That's why it's colored a little bit greener on this cover.
Yeah. So this is more along the lines of like a classic monster B movie than like Wiseau's The Room, right? Where the director was like so incredibly
exactly. Yeah, this is if the Wiseau is the Room is like a car accident that's kind of fascinating, but like also just like gross and kind of makes you feel bad. This is like good vibes only. Like you will feel great after watching this movie.
I love that in the thing that we got from the splash here. They put the little sticker horror on it just to make sure that make sure that after you've seen it, you know that it's horror. that
See,
you're
they
getting
don't
into.
they don't have to put that on the card game that we all play because it has horror right in the title, so it would be
Yeah.
redundant, right?
Right.
But with this movie, it just says "Don't let the river beast get you." If it didn't have the horror sticker, you might think that it means like "Don't let the river beast get you a nice birthday present" or something, you know. So it's the horror sticker really just clarifies that.
Do you think that they had to like have whoever was wearing this suit like wear it in one take, and they just only filmed on one day because they just couldn't afford like taking the suit off and then like having him put it back on?
And here's my suggestion is that you should watch this movie because I think you might have a better sense of how the suit works and what they can and can't do while wearing the suit if you watch the movie.
All right. Well, I think that's enough for today. You gotta end on the pie of the river beast.
38%. That's such bullshit. Like, come on.
I mean, Dan, can't you just go and make a review on Rotten Tomatoes and there'll be 2 reviews and you could double its rating?
Just be like 10 out of 10.
You'd have to be
for
this.
I think for some reason I'm not a tomato licensed movie critic, although obviously that should be rectified. That doesn't feel right to me, so I don't know.
It feels like the crab movie they made in the Lock and Key Netflix show. Oh, did anybody watch that? I was kind of like curious about the Lock and Key Netflix show. That's another one.
I think it's on my list today. Oh, Archive 88, very good.
I've never heard of Lock and Key. I've never heard of this thing called Netflix. I don't know anything about it. Here's all I have to say. I'm pretty sure there's literally nothing on Netflix that's as good as this movie. You gotta get on Tubi for the really good shit. That's just how the world works, or Plex, or whatever.
That's where all the indie gems lie. Well, before we sign off, a bit of MUR news. Ben and I are going to be live tomorrow, Friday, April 22nd, 2022. Continue the Call of the Plague Bearer campaign, which is a fan-made campaign. And we're actually going to be doing it with the team of Mateo and Zoe. In addition, since the last episode, we've joined up to fight alongside the folks in the Mythos Busters' homebrew play-along, which is a thing that everybody they do. I don't know what the next one is, but this one kind of just started. So we're pretty excited to play along with them. I know that they also have one for the actual official campaigns, and they actually just started a couple weeks ago, I think, the Circle Undone. So if you're interested in those kinds of things, go and check those out. But otherwise, how do you all stir your collections? Are you going to be watching Don't Let the River Beast Get You anytime soon? Have you checked out Elden Ring yet? Let us know. Send us an email over at comments@mur.fm or chat with us on Discord. To stay current on what we're doing, follow us on social media. You can find our links over at social.mur.fm. Or if you're in the Twitch chat, you can type !socials. If you really enjoy what we do and want to get more involved, you can become one of our patrons at patreon.com/Miskatonic University Radio, or just leave us a nice review on your favorite podcasting source. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight with us on Twitch. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you, folks. And don't let the river beast get you.